Okay. Magnus strike back.
Usually,
What?
it's our job to say things, but every single move that Magnus played had a purpose and was perfectly
Yeah.
executed.
I don't want to give us any unnecessary credit here. We know our, at least my job is to look like an idiot and, maybe have some fun. But I think we predicted Magnus's moves partly because that game was so easy. Like it was just like every move we said Magnus played like that. That was not one that Arjun wants to remember. Forget that one. Focus on the moment. You've got white again.
And this knight c6 move, given a question mark, it's just one of the random moves you play in an opening to get out of theory. But one of the reasons I think is that black doesn't gain the space that you typically do. You want to strike at white center with a pawn. The knight on c6 attacked nothing, and in fact, it's gone from where it previously sat. So what is happening here? This feels like one of those Jabawa London. I know that many courses have been made about it. I've never quite understood it myself. White pushing a pawn to g4, but then black just offers trades, and doesn't white just have tons of weaknesses in the position?
They do, but I love these games for white, right? Because lots of weaknesses are my jam with an unsound attack. I mean, the Jababa London this is what it's about. You're going to castle long and push both pawns. And again, it's way too early to claim that Arjun is playing aggressive because of tilt. This is just his style. Like Arjun wants these kind of games, and here we go. It's going to be a fun one.
I just think that black has done absolutely nothing special, and has if you play g5 and this knight sits on f5, that is just nasty. G6 to follow, and you have an outpost, even though there are pawns that can attack it. So you're looking at this position for Arjun. You can't play h3. There's a rook loose on h1. f3 is capturing in the wrong direction if we get there. And I'll add that h4 doesn't trap the bishop, but it actually helps you go corral this e5 pawn in many positions. So it looks ugly. I'm surprised that it's actually close to equal.
Still, it's funny. I complimented the approach. Love Arjun's style. We know that, and I like playing these aggressive positions. But the moment I saw h5 and then everything that came out of your mouth after that, I was like, I agree. Like h5, such a well-timed strike by Magnus for all the reasons you pointed out. But by the way, so this is how Arjun handles it. This is why it's still equal. You go real aggressive. You say, forget castling. Let's open up the center now with e4, and. By the way, now let's point out white's advantages. Those knights kind of stink, and they're passive, and they're in the way of the queen. So if Arjun can get castled long and play f4 next, which he's doing, he still has chances here.
It's a really good point, and especially after c6, black doesn't want to take on e4 because the knight will then venture on into that d6 square. With check or without, it's still going to hurt. And so this e5 pawn is hanging, but you can't really take it with your king in the center. And a6, given a question mark, still saying slightly better for white. I see this as about +1, but in a dynamic position like this, Danny, it's not the same +1 as just being up a healthy pawn in an endgame. It's actually very complicated still. Both sides will have to play accurately.
Agreed. And I also like that it's not straightforward. You can't just play f5 right away, but I think Arjun's plans are clear. You'd love to get f5 before black's king gets out of the center. That's kind of the goal here. If you can get some open lines before Magnus solves that problem, you might be running out of time.
And here a knight can go to e4 if a pawn takes, because the d7 knight will be loose. But that move given a miss, so apparently pawn takes d5, which looked quite promising to my eyes, is wrong. And Magnus doing the right thing, Danny. Which way does he take this pawn? Because he has three options, and it doesn't look entirely clear which is best.
Yeah, agreed. You don't like the knight coming to e4 because, as you pointed out, with check or without, d6 is a beautiful home for that pony. But if you take with the pawn, you're playing knight e4 anyway. This is going to be an interesting one. I think white will get that knight to d6. The question is, does black have his king on b8 at the end of those lines? And then, that bishop on g3, by the way, not a great piece. The f5 square is now open for business for Magnus eventually, either knight or rook. So this is equal or close to it for a reason. All kinds of weirdness.
And knight c5 is an intermezzo, but the reason I didn't suggest it so quickly is I was worried about some kind of b4. And I mean, look at this, queen d4, not the right square for the queen, but he goes exactly what I was talking about. And if I'm counting correctly, white is up a pawn. But Danny, this is amazing vision from Magnus.
Yeah.
He's going to be down a pawn, but all those light square pluses that you were talking about, they still exist. This knight can jump around to a square like e4. This pawn a5 is loose. This bishop on g3, I mean, it's generous to call it a bishop at the moment. Oh, it's hanging.
Yep. Oh, now it's hanging. There's a pin. No, You called it. What a brilliant plan from Magnus there. His recognition that he could give up that pawn and have a good knight versus bad bishop, or now an equal game where he's not down a pawn at all, and maybe better in the rook ending. Just like kind of crazy. Although it was a blunder, you were right to not suggest it, because I think queen to c4 was the move instead of queen d4 from Arjun, and then your threat of b4 was very real. Okay, all right, never mind. Well, too late. But I wonder what happened there in the crazy dynamics to give white that missed, and whether Arjun had a chance is all.
And Arjun, he made his move quite quickly, and he still has a chance in this endgame. We see that black is better. This pawn, white has 4 isolated pawns, right? We talk about pawn islands. Why do we like pawn islands? E6 and G6, they're safe and sound because of one teeny little pawn on F7. On the other hand, E5 requires a rook. H2 doesn't have a rook protecting it, but would have required a rook, a more valuable piece. And here comes the G pawn, Danny. The black king, unless it gets mated, it's just gonna walk up the board, but not yet.
Well, you can't play king h6 right away. But I thought he would just play. No, okay, G5 would have failed because of that idea of the H file. So this is the correct approach, and you now can play king h6 because there's no longer a skewer. Oh, making it look easy. Wow.
I have very few words, and Magnus has done this against many other prodigies. I remember his game against Gukesh. He won that game. He sort of did it in a similar fashion, just getting into an end game and then winning from there. And here, black is already up 1 pawn. It looks like a second is dropping. The black king is helping to escort this pawn to the other side. And Magnus, he still isn't playing like bullet at the moment. He's taking his time, and he just wants to wrap this up in convincing fashion.
Yeah, that was an interesting move there. It both prevented c4 from Arjun and got the rooks connected, so maybe now the g-pawn can push more aggressively.
And this rook on c5 stuck. It's protecting c4 and e5, and this is the only square it can do that from.
Yeah, well coordinated. Arjun under 5 seconds, facing a potential 3-game deficit in the match, which if you're just tuning in would be the biggest lead of the day for Magnus Carlsen, and it is so.